So here's my thought on dating apps. I think that things like Tinder and that have changed dating astronomically, but I don't think it's a good change because it's lost the connection that you get with someone. Like if you're just standing talking at a bar or if you're out for a meal or something, I think that bit's been lost because what we've got now is you've got a lot of folk who are using these apps and I don't think they're necessarily looking for relationships, it's more they're just looking for hookups, if I'm honest.
No, I don't believe it.
I don't necessarily disagree with that, that notion. Why wouldn't you want to look for a hookup if you don't have the time to put into a relationship? But you're saying that the app thing has adversely affected dating because you don't have that connection that you get with someone in a bar or whatever. But what if you don't drink and you don't go to bars because you don't like them? And how do you get to that dinner in the first place without an initial introduction? So I think it really opens up the scope for being able to meet people. Like I work from home, so I don't work in an office. I can't go out and meet people. My current partner, who I've been with for almost 2 years now, I met him on Tinder. So we just swiped on each other. It was an instant attraction, which was good. And then we started chatting. We met up. We went on a kind of hookup thing. So it wasn't supposed to be a long-term thing. But we connected so well that he's now moved from Wales to Scotland. And I mean, I guess mine's is maybe one of these kind of 1 in a million good stories and all that. But without Tinder, I'd never have met him. Yeah, because I would have been stuck to my own circle of friends and my own people that I know, rather than being able to get access to a whole bunch of different guys from different areas. So.
And I didn't think that's any different to just kind of cutting about, hassling lasses at bars, seeing which one fancies you and is single and is in the mood that night.
Yeah, at least she can block you then. If she
exactly.
If you start getting a bit leery, you know.
The advantage of Tinder is it's done with consent for the start. See, Arnie going up to strangers, whoever's on there wants to be on there, wants to be approached. And I didn't think it's actually changed things that much, Tinder itself. Because it's not like we weren't shagging at all. And then as soon as Tinder came out, we're all at it like rabbits. Like, folk that were shagging before are shagging after. Folk that I ken that use it just for hookups were hooking up before. You know, they weren't just sitting at home with their mum's darning on a Saturday night. Tinder is just a way of running the numbers. Where in the old days, you'd hate to go through all the bars, you'd hate to chat to all these folk, you'd hate to ask out 10, 12, 15 lasses, which can be pretty intimidating. It can be pretty, like, I really enjoyed it because I thought it was fun. But you'd still have to have like 5 or 6 drinks before you get into it. It's a big song and dance. You can just get the numbers done quicker with Tinder. I didn't like it because I think it's just appearance-based. And I've got a big stupid red face, so it's not absolutely ideal. But in terms of the actual attraction to somebody, for me, it's like 70% not visual. You know, it's the way they act, it's the way they laugh, it's the things they say, it's the way they carry themselves, the way they smell often. All these things are pretty subtle, you know.
But if you do it wider than Tinder, like Bumble, where people can contact or people can match, so a male and a female matches. It doesn't have to be male and female, but if it's male and female that matches, the female then has 24 hours to contact the guy. So if she doesn't, then they lose the match and they lose each other. So it's kind of, I guess you could say there's pressure on the woman to contact the guy, but also it puts all the kind of power into her hands. So if she wants to speak to that guy, if she changes her mind, all she has to do is wait for 24 hours and he can't call and hassle her. And then you don't end up on like Instagram by Philippe page and stuff for being too pushy or whatever. So I don't know.
What if you never get swiped the right direction and you're sitting there and you've got self-confidence issues maybe, or then wouldn't you say that that's a negative thing, whereas in person,
that's
not
on you
happening
to
as
fix
much.
your confidence issues. That's not on people swiping to fix
That's
that.
it. I think we were still fairly shallow before Tinder. Like,
I was.
I wasn't going to be like, oh, look at her personality. Like it is quite, like we were quite a visually driven society anyway. The problem I think is it's mostly an entertainment app. Folk go on there for a laugh, to get a bit of validation. It's not necessarily for meeting folk. You know, you upload a profile. Sorry, please.
Yeah, no, I have to say that, like, I've never used Tinder, but I have friends that have used Tinder, and there is nothing more entertaining than helping them swipe. It's so much fun, and I'm just like, yeah, this is great fun. Like, I would want this just to...
Totally.
Have you ever got hold of your friend's phone and swiped right on loads of people that you know they're not going to fancy?
100%, but that's it. It's for fun. The one I'm a bit feary is Facebook are launching a dating app next year, right? And it's going to use all the data from your whole profile.
Oh,
and they ken everything about you. They ken you inside out.
That's going to
and
be
they're going to
another
match
reason
you.
to delete Facebook.
Yeah.
No, exactly. Man's a cynical shell of my professional self. But if you get so somebody that's really invested in Facebook since they're kind of 17, they're now 27, they've got a decade worth of detailed information stored in the databases, they will then match you with someone that's perfectly suited to you. And they automatically gate you, even if you're in a relationship. So all you have to do, say you've been with somebody 2 or 3 years, and you think, here, Facebook kens me inside out. Could I do better than this slob? I could actually, aye. They will pick you someone perfect. And it's for long-term relationships and all.
Yeah.
And you think,
So Facebook is just totally putting side chicks in there.
well, I think they're really gonna change the game. They're really gonna change the game because I reckon they could pick out. Actually, I'm not going to say that.
What?
Well, I was going to say they could pick out a better partner than the one I picked out myself, but I'm not going to say that because my girlfriend won't. No.
I think as well, Tinder is just one thing, but there are also so many other dating apps that are catered specifically to finding sort of more personality-based, which, they may or may not work, but they are there. I think, Tinder does tend to have the sort of, it is kind of for hookups, but it can also go the other way.
Man. I mean,
It can go the
you've
other
met a
way.
partner.
I've got a
my
great
pal's
partner.
met a partner off it. I would say OkCupid I used once back in maybe 2013 or something.
Yeah.
It was great because you got to be so creative with it. I like to write. So I could get really creative with it. And I just thought, I can outright maced folk. So I can really stand out on this platform. And I could go and look for other lasses that had this bright, creative, interesting profile, a bunch of interesting paragraphs, things I could really get to ken them. And think, well, me and them will get along fine.
I mean, before I met my current partner, I'd been on a few dates with people, and I had a couple of guys that were incredibly short. And that seems to be a thing, a funny thing.
Why do you keep looking at me when you say that?
I'm not meaning it directly at you. I'm sure you're very tall and posing.
On a booster
I'm not
seat.
standing up.
So something I do for work a lot is teach Scots in schools. There's loads of schools now that are bringing in the Scots SQA Scots Language Award. So giving folk a chance to learn Scots in schools outside of Burns Night. Already Burns Week, you probably got this yourselves at school. You'd get a bit of kind of tam o'shanter, you'd get a wee bit of this, that and the other to indulge a bit in Scots language, but it wasn't a part of the curriculum. Now it's been brought in more the way that English is taught. You explore it through the history of the language, the literature, the ways of using it, the ways of self-expression, and you get an award in it which ties towards your literature. It's all about connecting the community with the school. And there's so much intergenerational learning goes on. I'm not sure about yourselves, but you're fae Dundee, I can where you're fae. Your grandparents certainly are fluent Scots speakers, probably. A lot of folk in kind of...
No.
No.
Well, a lot of folk of the older generations have real fluency in Scots. So when you go into school and say, and it's the new SQA thing's all about local dialect, so Doric, Dundonian, Shetland, Glaswegian, it's all about using your local dialect. It legitimises the community's mode of self-expression in a classroom environment. The other great thing about it is, and I heard this from my pal that teaches Scots in Dundee, is it tends to be the wee bams. Just generally speaking, folk fae working class households in Dundee and that kind of place tend to be Scots speakers more than middle class folk, and in rural areas as well. So these bairns tend to be disadvantaged. But if you use Scots, they become the class leaders because they have a better knowledge of the language than their classmates. So they can help push them forward. They can help close the attainment gap by having this additional knowledge. So in Dundee, my pal teaches Scots there. What's your kind of lived experience at?
I can't really get my head around why it would need to be taught in school because it's just something that I've always lived around, and it's sort of something that you pick up from your surroundings. And it's sort of, to me, it kind of sounds like, why would you need to sort of teach that to people? Their surroundings teach that. Does that?
You're absolutely right. So the idea of teaching it in school isn't to teach it as a foreign language.
Yeah.
It's the same way we learn English at school. It's to explore the boundaries.
Yeah.
And it's not about saying that it's a kind of some sort of fancy Latin thing that we hate to learn by rote at school.
Yeah.
It's just saying you know this anyway.
Yeah.
So let's bring on your skills in that to enhance your literacy in it.
Yeah, I think from sort of using it to study sort of Scots literature from that sort of perspective. I can't find a way to disagree with that, but it's just kind of, I think when people say, oh, it should be sort of taught, it kind of sounds immediately like the way that you would learn German or Spanish, you know?
I don't think it'll ever die out. I think that it's been kept alive within communities and cultures, and it will continue to do that locally. But in terms of it going back to its national platform, I mean, Scots was the national language. And then, of course, when the Act of Union came in and then we started to see this kind of crackdown on what it was to be Scottish, we started to see our culture being anglicised. And to me, by reclaiming Scots and bringing Scots back into the national front, what we're actually saying is, look, the Scottish culture, the essence of Scottishness is still here. We're still distinct. We still have our own essence within the UK.
I mean, how beneficial really is it, and how big is the uptake? Like, I've got a friend who teaches Gaelic just now, and he's fluent. He's taught his niece, but nobody else is really that interested in learning it. And then, like,
how do you mean nobody else?
Like any of our friends or any of his family, they're just not interested. It's him and his young niece who's been learning it since she was 3.
That's okay.
As a Scottish traveller, we're an Indigenous people in Scotland, and of course we have the cant and we have Bula Regat, which are just as old, if not older.
Can you explain them?
So the Scottish traveller people have 2 languages,
Okay.
the cant and Bula Regat, which are the same age, if not older, than Scots and Gaelic. They're Indigenous languages to Scotland, so why do we never talk about those? When we're looking at dialect, some are put on a pedestal and some aren't, even within this sort of field about looking at these things.
I completely agree with you. Is there a bit of a kind of difficulty with the travelling community in the education system?
Well, but then when you look at Bula Regat, so Bula Regat is our version of Gaelic, basically. It's the ancient form of Scottish traveller
Gaelic.
Gaelic.
Some words in it.
So I don't speak it, I speak the cant. But the only expression I know in Bula Regat is it's raining. And to say it's raining is Montclair Bagheer Machu.
And Montclair means water.
Montclair is water, yes. And so basically it means the water is coming onto me. But it's
one of your services.
Completely, yes. It's a completely different language.
Yeah, okay.
You know, like folk will use Scots words all the time and probably not recognise that it's Scots.
Well, give me an example of that then.
Shugle.
Shugle?
Aye.
Okay.
You'd say shugle all the time.
Yeah.
Just a Scots word. Kirk.
Kirk?
Aye.
Okay.
That's a Scots word that comes from the Dutch.
People just don't realise that it's an alive language because they don't recognise that it's anything out with a word that they use because they're Scottish.
Can I ask, what do you think Scots is?
Gaelic?
I see.
Am I off?
I see.
Completely off
I
target
was wondering. Aye, so Scots is like the Germanic East Coast language.
Right, okay.
So think of like Rabbie Burns.
Right.
He writes in Scots.
Yes.
Hugh McDermott, Nan Shepherd. So words like, just to give you some really common examples, like Bray for a hill,
Okay.
like up the Bray. Loads of words for rain, so it's dreich, it's ding and doon. That's a stoter.
I feel like you're reading off a tea towel or something. So to give you some background, I'm a dominatrix, so I deal with people's fetishes and what other people might see as taboos all the time. And one of the questions I get asked quite a lot is like, what's the weirdest thing you've ever done? And for me, the word weird has no meaning anymore because I do a whole range of different things with people. And I really like having that opportunity to help someone explore something. There may be things that I don't do, but I don't necessarily see them as a taboo or as a bad thing because it's their kink. Their kink's not my kink. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think, just because it's something that I wouldn't do, I wouldn't say that is a taboo. I would say to me, do whatever you want. I won't judge you. As long as you're not doing anything illegal, you're not infringing on anybody else's rights, then on you go. Good for you. I think as well, particularly the fetish community kind of gets quite a hard time, particularly with sort of certain movies that have came out and obviously show these relationships in a complete, just the wrong way.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes people judge quite quickly, and I don't think that's right.
Did you feel that when 50 Shades of Grey and stuff came out? Did you feel like, because I feel like when you said you're a dominatrix, we're like, oh, buzzing, well, that's cool. Our folk, judging our folks like that seems unreal.
Yeah. I'm really open about it. So it was one of my aunts actually that I spoke to, and I was like, I'm doing this job and I'm a bit worried about backlash. This is, 8.5 years ago when I first started. And I was worried about backlash from friends and family and people that I told. And she gave me a really good bit of advice. She said, if you look at your feet and you look ashamed of what you're doing when you tell them that's what you do, then these people are going to assume that it's a shameful thing. If you look them in the eye and you're quite confident about it because you're happy doing what you're doing and you're doing good things for people, then say it that way, and then that'll help to remove the stigma. And that is what I've stuck by for my whole career, and it's served me really well. It's helped people to be able to open up to me and come out of their shell a little bit. And I just find it a really rewarding thing to do. So as long as everything's safe, sane, consensual, then I'm happy. 50 Shades, safe, sane and consensual. Yeah. So not being under the influence of drugs and alcohol at the time that you're doing each act. If it's been thoroughly thought out and you're coming at it from a sane place, you're able to make your own sound judgments and things like that, And these are things that the kink community has done since the beginning, and it's something that's only really recently been spoke about in the media for people that we would refer to as being vanilla.
Right here.
So there's this buzzword of consent, and we're like,
that's what I'm thinking.
We're meant to be the weirdos, but we're the ones that's been doing the consent thing since the beginning. So,
aside for the acts, which are kind of maybe a bit glamorised or whatever, the actual sexual philosophy there would have been so handy to ken about when I was like 14, 15. Because you're learning about sex for somebody's older brother who's a bit weird. Yes. You're learning about it for guesswork.
Yeah, if she says no,
porn.
Just try harder or try this. Like,
not even just that. Just the whole vibe was,
Yeah, the consent thing is a big thing. Safety as well. So anytime we use toys or anything like that, there's always a condom on it. Sex is generally done protected. So these are all just things that we think about, and we think, right, well, I want to make sure that person, if they're putting all that trust in me, for me to be able to be vulnerable and lay all my shit out and get into this sexual scene or whatever that you're doing, then at least have the decency to protect that person. Use condoms and use lube and use. Make sure that if you're doing a rope scene that you've got scissors handy. That person's putting trust in you. You need to honour that.
Like, I think in Scotland we're pretty squeamish about it. I didn't learn anything at home or in school aside from wear a condom, and that was it.
Well, do you remember when the laws changed to remove certain things from porn in the UK? So there were certain acts that were banned. So one of the acts was female ejaculation. But male ejaculation was allowed to stay, and I'm like, So
they passed a law to say they couldn't show female ejaculation.
Couldn't show it, weren't allowed to show it at all, no squirting.
All my mates were all like, oh, this is crap. That's the only time they ever looked at the newspaper, I think, in their life, to this day.
So they removed that from porn, and I thought, well, there are women who naturally that is the way their body reacts. Like, it's just a phenomenon that they happen to experience. There's other women that can't do it. There's some women that can work towards being able to do it. Maybe not as spectacular as some of the people you see in porn, but it's still a valid body reaction, and some people might be able to identify with that because they're already thinking, am I weird? Is this strange? Am I the only person that does this? And then they can see that it's not. And I saw that as government level body shaming. Like, they were creating a taboo that didn't have to be there by removing certain things that it's just like a normal female reaction for some people.
I must admit, completely vanilla in every single essence of the word. I come from a community where
there's no such thing as vanilla.
Well,
I don't believe so.
But I come from a community where sex is never spoken about, like, ever. It would never be spoken about with women. Like, complete blanket ban. So it's incredibly taboo, even just like normal, like vanilla sex is taboo. So when it comes to stuff that even the settled community deem as taboo, it's just completely off the off the radar for us.
But surely travellers would spend a lot of time in close confinement in sexually active relationships with the bairns in the caravan with them.
Well, presumably, but there's so much stuff in terms of like modesty and sex should never be spoken about, and you know, it's really, really quite strict. So no, I've never. If you're asking me that if I was in a trailer and I heard my mum, I'm one of 6.
It's exactly.
And if I heard my mother and father having sex,
exactly.
no, I never. Right. Thank God. But yeah, it's just, I think it's really interesting because as a society, we do talk about this something that's really natural. Everyone does it or has done it in the past, and you know, it's been going on for hundreds of years, and yet we still have this sort of societal shame around it.
So I teach in St Andrews University about kink stuff and how to plan your own scenes effectively, and I give them some insight into some terms that they might hear, roles that people could play, fetishes and things, and then we get into a communication exercise.
And then the wrong uni.
But one of the slides that I do is about are you kinky, and I ask them questions like, have you ever played hard to get? Or have you ever chased someone that's played hard to get? And that is a form of psychological tease and denial. So that is in essence kinky. If you've ever used sex as a reward or withheld it as a weapon. So if someone has, like your partner's like maybe not done the dishes that day or pissed you off that week, and you're just like, you know what, I'm not going to have sex with you for a week, and that'll make you behave better. And that's a thing that women do, it is. And that is a form of chastity play, but you're just not using a device. So people are inherently kinky, they just don't know it yet. So that's one of the things that I teach people as well. I think it needs to start with breaking down the shame and the taboos and allowing people to just talk about it openly.
I think that that's something wrong. I don't think that should be within our society, especially in 2019. It is still the case, but I don't know if the government's looking at it properly. I don't know if these sort of schemes to bring people out of what is perceived as deprived or under sort of represented communities, making it easier for them to get into jobs rather than people from higher classes. I don't know if that's right either. And I feel like it's the same problem, we've just flipped it.
Yeah, I think equal for everybody. You know, it's not fair that certainly that was the case, like you said, that upper class people would certainly, you know, sort of probably through family connections as well, get very good jobs. And but now, as you say, there are things to make it a bit more even. But as you said, it's flipped. So why can't there be a balance? Why can't there be a balance that if you're just the best person for the job, you get the job?
I think it's noble to say that it should still be done in merit, but the fact of the matter is it's just not the way the world is. Like, it would take a lot of change to change that. Even just the differences in having state schools and having private schools where you can pay for education, and then with that comes connections, and it comes family bonds between different families that are of a different class to the people that are going to state schools. There are positions of privilege that we can speak from, which maybe clouds some of our judgment as well. Like, I know that being white, female, British, then I've got a better chance of maybe doing better at uni or getting into university and getting a place than, say, someone who's of an ethnic minority. And, you know, it's just, that shouldn't be allowed either, you know. But, you know, how do you balance it? It's a really delicate thing to discuss, I suppose.
I don't know if it's, like, necessarily about class, though. I think it's more like, for example, right, so I went to uni, I'm still at uni, I do a lot of stuff with the government, I do a lot of stuff with the Council of Europe, so I'm on quite a high level with that. And a lot of folks from my community aren't. They don't get those doors open to them at all. And I had this exact same conversation with some of my friends, and what they said is, you've like got a polished face. And I was like, what the hell does that mean? Right, we were getting into it. And he basically said that you've became like, the institutions have been able to shape you and mould you. I'm not middle class, I come from a very, very working class background. So I would never claim to be middle class.
Yeah.
But they've shaped me so I can be perceived as middle class. you know, we go back to like the Scots thing and you know, the different dialects and how people are allowed to speak. When you go to university, that gets drilled at you. When you go to university, you become this type of person that then comes out and you go into those positions. And that's why young bairns can't see themselves reflected in likes of politicians. Because all politicians went through the exact same process of like polishing. So really the issue is this like societal polishing of people rather than the fact that we're only taking people from middle and upper classes.
Though I was raised in a council house and raised working class and all that, eventually through a member of the middle class part of my family, I got an introduction to an introduction to an introduction, and then started writing for newspapers almost straight away. And once I was in there writing for newspapers, everyone started taking me seriously, could get a job with a university, could get a job with the BBC, all that kind of stuff. You know, people start taking you really seriously once they know you're vouched for in that little middle class bubble that does run Scotland. Very, very Anglophile, very kind of self-serving.
I have to say, on your point about going to university and sort of the Scots dialect specifically being sort of drilled out of you, one of my work colleagues, he is sort of from quite a rough part of Dundee, and he is, you know, as Dundonian as you could possibly find. You know, he's like a total lad, you know, that sort of thing. But he's at Dundee University and he's studying law, and he is, you know, he's doing amazing for himself, but he's still that rough and ready lad that, you know, sort of grew up in Stobie and is, but it's just he got that opportunity and he worked hard himself to get that opportunity. But he's still the same, you know? They were fascinating to speak to.
It's not every day you get a traveller, someone from Dundee, a dominatrix and a Scots speaker all on a couch.
It was very friendly and very civilised.
Just a good blether with some interesting folk.
I'm just used to Glasgow banter.